The Great Hall was so big that Jake Morrison could barely see the walls. Thousands of aliens filled the space, each one different from the last. Some looked like giant insects. Others glowed with their own light. A few were just clouds of gas held together by energy fields. Jake had never seen so many different kinds of life in one place. He stood in the center of the hall with his hands tied behind his back. His uniform was torn and dirty. Blood had dried on his face from where the guards had hit him 3 weeks ago. His body hurt, but he kept his back straight and his head up. Above him floated the Supreme Arbiter. It was a being made of pure energy, contained in a glowing bubble. When it spoke, every translator in the room turned its words into sounds that each species could understand. "Human Jake Morrison, you have been found guilty," the Arbiter said. Its voice was cold and empty of feeling. "You refused to give up your ship when the hegemony told you to. You attacked their vessels. You told other species to fight against them. These are serious crimes." Jake said nothing. He just watched the floating energy being with calm eyes. The Arbiter continued. "The Zathari hegemony has brought peace to 8,000 worlds. They have ended wars that lasted for centuries. Your species is new to space. You know nothing of how things work out here. The hegemony has offered your people a place in the galactic order. All you must do is obey." Around the hall, representatives from hundreds of species watched. Most of them had surrendered to the hegemony long ago. Some had given up 100 years ago. Others had submitted 1,000 years before humans even built their first rocket. They all knew what was coming next. "Your human leaders have made a deal," the Arbiter said. "Your species will accept hegemony rule. You will disband your military. Your colony worlds will have hegemony governors. And you, Jake Morrison, will kneel before this tribunal. You will beg for forgiveness. Do this, and your species will be allowed to survive." The hall was completely silent. Every eye in the room was on Jake. "What is your answer?" the Arbiter asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He looked around at all the watching aliens. He saw fear in some faces, curiosity in others. But mostly, he saw acceptance. They had all made this choice before. They had all knelt. "My grandfather was a teacher back on Earth," Jake finally said. His voice was steady and clear. "He taught history to kids. He told me once that every generation faces a moment when they have to decide what matters more than living." He looked directly at the Arbiter. "You want me to kneel? You think I will because everyone does eventually. Because it makes sense. Because fighting is stupid when you cannot win." "Choose your next words carefully, human," the Arbiter warned. Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Here are my words. No." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens who had not spoken in years suddenly started talking. Some shouted. Others made strange sounds of confusion. The human ambassador, a woman named Helen Parker, turned pale and grabbed the edge of her seat. "No?" the Arbiter repeated. It sounded confused, as if it had never heard the word before. "That is right. No. I will not kneel, I will not beg, and I will not tell my people to surrender," Jake said. His voice grew stronger with each word. "You want to know what humans are? We are the species that looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. We built boats to cross oceans that scared us. We climbed mountains because they were tall. We solved problems that everyone said could not be solved." "You speak of pride," the Arbiter said. "Pride will not protect you from our weapons." "This is not about pride," Jake replied. "This is about something you have all forgotten. Freedom. Real freedom. Not the kind you get by bowing. The kind you fight for." A massive alien covered in armor stood up. It was a Zathari, one of the species that ruled the hegemony. "The human speaks treason. Kill him now and end this waste of time." But Jake kept talking. "Go ahead, kill me. But you need to understand something. I am not special. Back on Earth, there are 8 billion more humans just like me. Every single one will make the same choice I am making." "Impossible," the Zathari hissed. "No species can be that foolish." "Then you do not know humans," Jake said simply. The Arbiter was quiet for a moment. Its energy field flickered. In 10,000 years of hegemony rule, no one had simply said no. Not like this. Not with such complete certainty. Very well, the Arbiter finally said. You have chosen death for your entire species. The hegemony fleet will go to human space. Your worlds will burn. Your cities will fall. Your people will serve as an example to anyone else who thinks about resisting. Jake looked at the Arbiter without any fear in his eyes. Maybe we will burn, but we will burn standing on our feet, not on our knees. Guards began to move toward Jake to take him back to his cell. But then something unexpected happened. In the back of the hall, a small alien stood up. It was barely 4 feet tall, with gray skin and large eyes. Most people did not even know its species name anymore. I would like to hear more from the human, it said in a quiet voice. The Arbiter turned its attention to the small creature. Counselor Venn, your species surrendered 400 years ago. Why do you care what this human has to say? Yes, we surrendered, Venn said. His voice got stronger. And for 400 years, I have wondered if we made a mistake. I have wondered if peace without freedom is really peace at all. The hall fell silent again. Aliens looked at each other with surprise. No one had questioned the hegemony in centuries. Venn looked at Jake. Tell me, human. If you know you cannot win, why do you fight? Jake met his eyes. Because some things matter more than winning. Because I would rather die free than live as a slave. Because if I kneel now, my children will be born on their knees, and their children after them. But you will die, Venn said. Yes, Jake agreed. But my death will mean something. It will show every human that we do not have to obey. It will prove that we have a choice. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison refused to kneel. Now, 200 alien warships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each ship was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. The smallest one could destroy a city with a single shot. The largest could burn an entire planet. War leader Thexkor sat on the bridge of his flagship. He was confident. The humans had maybe 50 ships total. His fleet alone had 200. The battle would be over in days. Begin the advance, he ordered. Target the third planet. We will show them what happens to species who defy the hegemony. On the human ship, Defiant, Captain Amy Rodriguez watched her screens. She saw the alien fleet moving toward Earth. Her ship was tiny compared to them. If they fought face to face, she would lose in seconds. All ships, activate Morrison Protocol, she said calmly. The Morrison Protocol was named after Jake. It was simple. Never fight fair. Never fight the way the enemy expects. Never surrender. As the alien fleet moved forward, the human ships scattered in all directions. They did not run away. They just disappeared from the alien sensors. They are fleeing, Thexkor said with satisfaction. Continue forward. We will reach their homeworld by tomorrow. But the humans were not fleeing. They were hiding. Human ships used old technology to hide themselves. The aliens had sensors that looked for fancy energy signals. Human ships just turned off their engines and coasted silently through space. The alien sensors could not find them. Suddenly, Thexkor's ship shook. Report, he shouted. Torpedo hit on our port side. Minor damage. We cannot find where it came from. Then another ship got hit. And another. All across the fleet, human ships would appear just long enough to fire their weapons, then vanish again. The torpedoes were simple, just nuclear bombs with rocket engines. But they were fast and hard to track. The humans were not aiming at the big warships. They were targeting the support ships, the ones that carried fuel and ammunition, the ones that repaired damage. Without these ships, the warships could not fight for long. All ships, defensive formation, Thexkor ordered. But defensive formations meant the ships had to slow down and stay together. And while they did that, human ships kept attacking. Strike and hide. Strike and hide, over and over. On the Defiant, Amy watched her screens with grim determination. Target locked. Fire all tubes. 6 torpedoes flew toward an alien ammunition ship. 3 got shot down. 3 hit their target. The ship did not explode. Its engines just stopped working. The crew had to abandon it. That makes 5 support ships disabled, her officer Kyle Brooks reported. Good, Amy said. Set course for the asteroid belt. Let us see how their big ships handle flying through rocks. Throughout the solar system, human ships refused to fight normally. They used asteroids for cover. They hid behind moons. They attacked from unexpected directions. When aliens chased them, they found mines and drones waiting. The aliens expected a normal war. Fleets facing each other in open space. Clear battle lines. Honorable combat. Instead, they got chaos. Back on Earth, General Paul Martinez watched the battle reports. His forces were doing better than expected, but he knew it could not last. How long can we keep this up? Asked Colonel Lisa Hayes. 3 weeks before we run out of torpedoes, Paul said. Maybe 4 weeks if we are careful. Then what? Paul showed her a file on his computer. It was labeled Morrison Protocol, Phase 2. Then we ram them, he said quietly. Lisa's eyes went wide. Sir, that means suicide. Yes, Paul agreed. But Jake Morrison taught us something important. Sometimes the only way to win is to show you are willing to lose everything. He looked at her. Every captain in the fleet volunteered for Phase 2, not because they want to die, but because they would rather die fighting than live kneeling. In space, the battle continued. Lieutenant Ryan Carter flew his fighter toward a massive alien carrier. His ship was tiny and fast. The carrier was huge and covered in weapons. Gold Squadron, this is Gold Leader, Ryan called on the radio. We are going for their engines, remember, hit them and run. We are not here to be heroes, we are here to break things. His 5 teammates acknowledged the order. They dove toward the carrier. Alien guns filled the space around them with fire. Ryan's fighter shook as explosions went off nearby, but he kept flying straight. At the last second, he fired all his missiles and pulled away hard. Behind him, the missiles hit the carrier's engine section. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to cripple it. Gold 3 is hit, someone yelled. I am going down. Ryan checked his screen. Gold 3 was Nicole Ward. Her fighter was tumbling toward the carrier, out of control. But she still had 1 missile left. Gold 3, eject now, Ryan ordered. Negative, Gold Leader, Nicole said. Her voice was calm despite her situation. I still have 1 missile. I am going to use it. Nicole. No! But she was already committed. Her damaged fighter accelerated toward the carrier. She dodged the defensive guns through sheer luck and skill. At the last moment, she fired her final missile into the carrier's hangar bay. Then her fighter crashed into the same spot. The carrier did not explode dramatically, but all its lights went out, its systems overloaded from the damage. Gold Squadron, return to base, Ryan ordered. His voice was tight with emotion. Mission complete. As he flew back, Ryan thought about Nicole, about all the humans who had died rather than surrender, about Jake Morrison refusing to kneel. The galaxy thought humans were crazy. Maybe they were right. But being crazy was keeping them alive. On the alien flagship, Thexcor stared at his damage reports. In 3 months, he had lost 12 support ships. 18 more were damaged. His fleet's fighting ability had dropped by 17%. 17%. Against an enemy that should not have been able to hurt him at all. Send a message to the Hegemony Council, he ordered. Request more ships, and request permission to start bombing their planets. But even as he gave the order, Thexcor felt something strange. Something he had not felt in his 30 years as a warrior. Doubt. What if the human at the tribunal had been right? What if there really were 8 billion more just like him? Thexcor looked at the planet Earth. 8 months into the war, Counselor Venn did something dangerous. He called a secret meeting. The meeting took place on a neutral space station, far from hegemony eyes. 20 aliens attended, each from a different species. All of them had submitted to the hegemony long ago. Some had surrendered 50 years ago. Others had given up centuries before humans discovered fire. They came because they were curious, and because Venn's message had mentioned the humans. Venn stood before them. He was small and looked weak, but his voice was strong. Thank you for coming. I know being here puts you all in danger. Why are we here? Asked a crystalline being from the Morvani species. Its body glowed with soft light. Your message said this was about the humans. What about them? Ven activated a hologram. It showed footage from the war. Human ships attacking and disappearing. Human colonies turning cities into fortresses. Human pilots flying damaged ships into enemy vessels. The humans are losing, Ven said simply. The hegemony has sent 3 complete fleets now. Millions of humans are dead. 6 of their colonies are gone. Earth itself is under constant attack. Then why do we care? Someone asked. The humans chose to fight. Now they are paying the price. Yes, they are losing, Ven agreed. But here is what matters. They have not surrendered. Not one world. Not one ship. Not even one person. He paused to let that sink in. The hegemony has offered them peace terms 12 times. Good terms. They could keep their culture and their government. They would only need to acknowledge hegemony authority. And, another alien prompted, and the humans keep saying no, Ven said quietly. The room went silent. That simple fact was shocking. Every species in the galaxy had eventually said yes to the hegemony. Why would anyone choose death over submission? A delegate from the Korvath, an aquatic species, spoke up. I heard about a human captain named Samantha Cole. When her ship was boarded and she was given one last chance to surrender, she activated the self-destruct. She killed everyone on the ship, her own crew and the enemy Marines. That is correct, Ven confirmed. Her last words were from human literature, a story about revenge and obsession. The humans have thousands of such stories. Stories that celebrate fighting impossible battles. Stories about refusing to give up even when there is no hope. An insect-like alien from the Vrex species clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. But what does this mean for us? Being brave does not stop hegemony weapons. Ven smiled. He had learned the gesture from studying humans. Does it not? The hegemony has committed 11% of its total military to fight the humans. That is 11% that is not watching our worlds, not enforcing their laws, not crushing rebellions before they start. The room went very quiet as everyone understood what Ven was suggesting. You want us to rebel, the Morvani said. Its light flickered with what might have been fear or excitement. I am saying the humans have reminded us of something important, Ven replied. The hegemony rules because we let them rule. They maintain order because no one disrupts that order. They have power because no one challenges their power. He looked around the room. Jake Morrison refused to kneel. In doing so, he showed us that we always had a choice. We just forgot. A choice between living and dying, someone pointed out. No, Ven said firmly. A choice between existing and truly living. The humans understand the difference. Over the next 3 months, strange things started happening across hegemony space. Small things at first. A colony would fail to deliver its tribute on time, blaming computer errors. A patrol would find its path blocked by broken satellites. Mining operations would suffer equipment failures. None of it was serious enough to warrant military action. But together, it meant the hegemony had to spread its forces thinner. They had to deal with 1,000 small problems instead of maintaining their iron control. And in human space, the war continued. In a bar on Mars, pilots gathered after another brutal mission. They were tired. They had lost friends. But they were still fighting. Why do we keep doing this? A young pilot named Chris Murphy asked. We all know how this ends. The hegemony has more ships than we can count. Eventually, they will overwhelm us. An older pilot, a woman named Karen Stone, looked at him. You are right. We will probably lose. But that is not the point. Then what is the point? Karen thought for a moment. My grandmother lived through the hegemony's first contact with humanity. She told me about the choice our leaders faced. Surrender and live as subjects, or fight and probably die. She said something I will never forget. What did she say? She said that some cages are so beautiful, you do not realize you are trapped until you try to leave. The hegemony offers peace, safety, and order, but it is still a cage. Karen finished her drink. We fight because we refuse to live in a cage, even a comfortable one. Chris was quiet for a moment. Then he raised his glass. To the cage breakers. Everyone in the bar raised their glasses. To the cage breakers. Across the galaxy, other species were having similar conversations. In secret meetings, in whispered discussions, in messages sent through encrypted channels. The Vrex were the first to make their move. On a cold morning, every Vrex colony simultaneously announced they were no longer part of the hegemony. When hegemony ships arrived to restore order, they found the colonies defended by makeshift weapons and determination. The hegemony had two choices: commit enough force to crush the Vrex quickly, or try to negotiate. They chose negotiation, not wanting to stretch their military even thinner while fighting the humans. That was their first mistake, because the other species saw that the hegemony had blinked. The mighty hegemony, which had ruled for 10,000 years, had been forced to negotiate with rebels. If the Vrex could resist, why not others? The Morvani were next. Then the Korvath. Then species whose names had been nearly forgotten, races that had submitted so long ago that no one remembered them being free. The Morrison Uprising, as it came to be called, spread like fire through dry grass. On the Hegemony Council Station, Supreme Arbiter Kalthos watched reports of rebellion coming in from 40 different sectors. 7 species had declared independence. Dozens more were dragging their feet on tribute and conscription. The carefully maintained order of thousands of years was coming apart, and it all traced back to one moment: one human refusing to kneel. How did this happen? Kalthos demanded of his advisors. The human. Morrison inspired them, one advisor said nervously. One human? One insignificant human caused all of this? Not caused it, the advisor corrected carefully. More like, reminded them. The capacity for rebellion was always there. The humans just showed them it was possible. Jake Morrison sat across from Supreme Arbiter Kalthos in a small plain room. No grand tribunal this time, no audience of thousands. Just 2 beings facing each other across a simple table. Jake looked thinner than before. His clothes hung loose on his frame, but his eyes still held that same fierce light that had surprised the Arbiter a year ago. Why? Kalthos asked without any formal greeting. Your species is being destroyed. Billions of your people are dead or homeless. Your colony worlds are in ruins. Your home world is scarred by war. All of this could have been avoided if you had simply bent your knee. So I ask you, human, why? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he began to speak. Did you know humans almost went extinct once? About 70,000 years ago, a volcano erupted on Earth. It blocked out the sun and caused a global winter. Our population dropped to maybe 10,000 people. 10,000 humans left alive in the entire world. I do not see how this is relevant. The relevant part is what happened next, Jake interrupted. Those 10,000 humans did not give up. They did not lie down and die. They survived. They adapted. They spread across the entire planet into every climate and environment. We went from 10,000 to 8 billion. We went from hitting rocks with sticks to flying between stars. And we did it because giving up is not in our nature. Pride, Kalthos said dismissively. Your species will die for pride. No, Jake replied firmly. You still do not understand. This is not about pride. It is about what we are. Humans are not built to kneel. We are built to stand up, to push forward, to keep going even when it seems impossible. You think you are crushing us, but every time one of us falls, we show the ones behind us that fighting back is possible. Every human who dies standing up is proof that we do not have to live on our knees. Proof of your extinction, Kalthos countered. Maybe, Jake admitted. Or maybe proof that freedom matters more than survival. That some things are worth dying for. He leaned forward. Here is what you do not understand about humans. We have been fighting our entire existence. We fought nature. We fought each other. We fought disease and famine and disaster. Fighting is what we do. It is in our DNA. And you thought you could make us stop just by being bigger and stronger? Kalthos was silent, processing this. Your species is irrational. Probably, Jake agreed with a slight smile. But we are also stubborn and creative and too stupid to know when we are beaten. And that scares you, does it not? Because if humanity can resist you, anyone can. Before Kalthos could respond, Alarms started blaring throughout the station. An aide rushed into the room. "Sir, we are under attack." "By whom?" Kelthos demanded. "Multiple species, sir. The Korvath, the Vrex, the Morvani. They are hitting hegemony facilities across 3 sectors simultaneously." "Impossible. Those species submitted centuries ago." "Yes, sir. But they are in open rebellion now, and they are calling it the Morrison Uprising." Kelthos turned slowly to look at Jake, whose face had broken into a wide smile. "See," Jake said. "That is the thing about Defiance. It spreads." Back in the Sol system, humanity was preparing for what everyone was calling the last stand. The hegemony had committed 5 complete fleets to ending the human threat once and for all. 5 fleets meant over 1,000 warships. There was no possible way humanity could survive. General Paul Martinez stood in Earth's War Command Center, deep underground. His staff moved around him with quiet efficiency, but everyone knew what was coming. The end. "General, we have an incoming transmission," a communications officer said. "It is from the rebellion fleets. They are asking if we need help." Paul looked up in surprise. "Help? From who?" The officer put the transmission on the main screen. It showed dozens of ships, a mixed fleet of vessels from species that had been under hegemony rule for centuries. The ships were old, poorly armed, and barely spaceworthy, but they were there. "This is Counselor Venn of the Free Worlds Alliance," the small alien said from the screen. "We heard that humans do not surrender. We have decided that we will not surrender either. Permission to join your fight?" Paul felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. It was a small hope, a fragile thing, but it was real. "Permission granted," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Welcome to the war." The Battle of Earth lasted 3 days and 3 nights. It was brutal and chaotic and nothing like the clean battles the hegemony was used to fighting. The Free Worlds Alliance ships fought with the same desperate creativity that humans had pioneered. They used tactics that no military academy taught. They took risks that no sane commander would approve. They fought like people who had nothing to lose. Captain Amy Rodriguez of the Defiant led a squadron of human and alien ships in a desperate attack on a hegemony dreadnought. Her ship was damaged, running on backup power, but she kept fighting. "All ships, concentrate fire on the command tower," she ordered. "We hit it hard enough. We can knock out their communications." Her mixed squadron attacked in a coordinated strike. Human torpedoes, Vrex plasma weapons, Morvani laser arrays, all hitting the same target at the same moment. The dreadnought's shields flared and collapsed. Its command tower exploded in a shower of debris. "Target destroyed," Kyle Brooks reported from his station. "But we have lost 8 ships in that attack." Amy closed her eyes for a moment. 8 ships, maybe 200 people. But the dreadnought had a crew of 5,000, and without its command tower, it was drifting, unable to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. "Worth it," she said quietly. "Set course for the next target." The battle raged across Earth's orbital space. Ships exploded. Debris filled the space lanes. Both sides took terrible casualties. On the surface, people looked up at the sky and saw flashes of light. Each flash was a ship dying. They did not know if it was one of theirs or one of the enemy's. They just knew that somewhere up there, people were fighting and dying to keep Earth free. In the hegemony flagship, war leader Thexkor watched his battle plans falling apart. The rebels were not fighting like they were supposed to. They were not following any rules. They just kept attacking, kept sacrificing themselves, kept finding new ways to hurt his fleet. "Sir, we have lost 47 ships. 112 more are damaged. The rebels have lost twice as many, but they keep coming." Thexkor stared at the tactical display. He could still win this battle. He had more ships, more firepower. But the cost was becoming unacceptable. "All ships, withdraw to Rally Point Beta," he finally ordered. "Sir? We are retreating?" "We are regrouping," Thexkor corrected, but everyone on the bridge knew the truth. They were retreating. The mighty hegemony was pulling back from Earth. When the hegemony fleet pulled away, a cheer went up across every human and rebel ship. They had not won the war. But they had won this battle. Earth still stood. On the Defiance bridge, Amy slumped in her chair. They had survived. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had survived. "Captain, incoming message from General Martinez," Kyle said. The general's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but he was smiling. "Captain Rodriguez, I have been authorized to inform you that the hegemony has requested peace negotiations. 2 years after Jake Morrison refused to kneel, the Zathari hegemony sat down to negotiate peace. The negotiations took place on a neutral world, in a conference room that was very different from the Grand Tribunal where everything had started. It was simple, plain, and small. Just a table and chairs. Jake Morrison, released from prison as part of the negotiation terms, sat across from Supreme Arbiter Kalthos. Between them sat representatives from 47 different species, all part of what was now called the Free Worlds Alliance. "You have destroyed thousands of years of order," Kalthos said. The energy being's field flickered with what might have been anger or sadness. "The hegemony brought stability to the galaxy. We ended wars. We brought peace." "You brought submission," Jake corrected gently. "There is a difference between peace and silence. Chaos will follow what you have done. Species will fight each other. Wars will break out." "Probably," Jake admitted. "But they will be free wars. People fighting for what they believe in, not just following orders handed down from above. They will make their own mistakes and learn from them." Kalthos was quiet for a long moment. "Your species has paid a terrible price for this freedom you value so much. Billions dead, worlds scarred, generations that will grow up knowing only war. Was it worth it?" Jake thought about everyone who had died. Captain Samantha Cole and her self-destruct. Nicole Ward flying her damaged fighter into an enemy carrier. The millions of civilians who had died in the bombings. The children who would grow up without parents. Then he thought about the message humanity had sent to the galaxy. "We are not your slaves. We will not bow. We will fight for as long as it takes." "Yes," he said simply. "It was worth it." The treaty that came out of those negotiations changed everything. The hegemony would keep control of its core worlds, but any species that wanted to leave could do so freely. No military punishment, no economic sanctions, just freedom to choose. A new galactic council would be formed with representatives from all species, not just hegemony members. Decisions would be made by vote, not by decree from above. It was not perfect. The galaxy was messy now. Species argued and disagreed. Some conflicts broke out. But for the first time in 10,000 years, those conflicts were between free people making their own choices. 6 months after the treaty was signed, Jake stood on the observation deck of a new Earth ship called Freedom's Price. He wore an admiral's uniform now, though he still felt uncomfortable with the rank. "I just did my job," he kept saying. But humanity had insisted on honoring him. Ambassador Helen Parker joined him at the window. Outside, ships from a dozen different species were conducting joint training exercises. Former enemies learning to work together. It was awkward and inefficient, but it was happening. "Quite a view," Helen said. "Yeah," Jake agreed. "Hard to believe it has only been 2 years." "The analysts are calling it the Morrison effect," Helen said with a smile. "One person's act of defiance inspiring systematic change across an entire civilization." Jake laughed. "That is giving me too much credit. I just refused to kneel. Everything else was done by billions of other people who made the same choice." "True," Helen agreed. "But someone had to go first. Someone had to show it was possible." They watched the ships maneuver for a while in comfortable silence. Then Helen asked, "So what now, Admiral? The war is over. What does humanity do with peace?" Jake smiled. "What we have always done. We explore. We build. We push boundaries. The galaxy is huge and it is full of species who are just now learning how to be free. I figure we can help with that." "By teaching them rebellion?" "By teaching them defiance," Jake corrected. "There is a difference. Rebellion is about tearing things down. Defiance is about refusing to accept what you are told is impossible. It is about looking at a problem and saying, 'Let us see about that.'" On the surface of Earth, in the rebuilt city of New Chicago, a monument was being unveiled. Thousands of people gathered to watch. The monument showed a simple figure standing upright with hands unbound and face turned toward the stars. The inscription at the base read, "Here stands one who would not kneel, and in standing taught a galaxy to rise." It was dedicated to every human who had fought in the war, and to every alien who had joined them. Every person, regardless of what planet they came from, who had chosen freedom over security. The statue was called the Unbowed. Similar monuments were being built across the galaxy. On Vrex colony worlds, in Korvath underwater cities, on Morvani crystal platforms. Each species wanted to remember the moment they chose to stand up. Jake Morrison watched the unveiling ceremony on a video screen. He had refused to attend in person, saying he did not deserve such attention. But Helen had insisted he at least watch it. "They are calling you a hero," she said. "I am not a hero," Jake replied. "Heroes do impossible things. I just did what any human would do. I refused to be a slave. And in doing so, you changed the galaxy." Jake shook his head. "No, the galaxy changed itself. I just reminded people that change was possible." Years later, after retiring from the military, Jake would travel the galaxy. He would speak at universities and conferences. He would meet with young people from 100 different species, and he would always tell them the same thing. Freedom is not given to you. You have to take it, and you have to be willing to defend it. Not with weapons necessarily, but with your refusal to be controlled, with your insistence on thinking for yourself, with your courage to say no when everyone else is saying yes. And whenever someone would thank him for starting the Morrison Uprising, he would shake his head and smile that familiar smile. "I did not start anything," he would say. "I just refused to kneel. You all did the rest. You all chose to stand. That was the hard part. Anyone can refuse once, but continuing to refuse day after day, year after year, against impossible odds, that takes real courage. You all had that courage. I just went first." But the young people listening would understand the truth. Sometimes that is all it takes. Someone to go first. Someone to show that refusing is possible. Someone to prove that one person can make a difference. Jake Morrison had been that person, and the galaxy would never forget. On his ship, Jake kept a small reminder of where it all started. It was a copy of the transcript from his trial, the moment when the arbiter had demanded he kneel and he had said no. Sometimes late at night, he would read it and remember that moment, the fear he had felt, the certainty that he was about to die, the knowledge that his choice might doom his entire species. 10 years after the war ended, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Zathari hegemony still existed, but it was different now. Species chose to be members instead of being forced. The hegemony offered protection and trade, but it could not demand obedience. It had to earn cooperation. It was a strange adjustment for everyone. Species that had ruled through fear now had to rule through respect. Species that had been subjects for centuries now had to learn how to govern themselves. Jake Morrison, now in his 50s, spent most of his time teaching. He traveled from world to world, speaking to anyone who would listen about freedom, responsibility, and the price of both. On a small colony world called Haven, Jake stood before a classroom of young aliens. There were Vrex children with their multiple eyes watching him curiously. Morvani youth whose crystalline bodies glowed different colors. Even a few young Zathari, children of the species that had once tried to conquer humanity. "Can anyone tell me what defiance means?" Jake asked the class. A small Vrex raised one of her many legs. "It means saying no to people in charge." "That is part of it," Jake agreed. "But it is more than just saying no." "Can anyone else add to that?" A Morvani child, his body glowing blue with thought, spoke up. "My parents say defiance is about choosing for yourself, even when it is hard." "Exactly," Jake said with a smile. "Defiance is not about being rebellious for no reason. It is about refusing to let others make your choices for you. It is about thinking for yourself and standing by what you believe is right." A young Zathari at the back, barely 6 years old, raised his claw. "My grandfather says you were wrong. He says the hegemony kept everyone safe and you ruined it." The classroom went silent. The teacher looked nervous. But Jake just nodded. Your grandfather might be right, he said calmly. The hegemony did keep people safe. There were fewer wars under hegemony rule. Less chaos. More order. The young Zathari looked surprised. So you admit you were wrong? No, Jake said. I admit the hegemony provided safety, but safety is not the same as freedom. Let me ask you something. If I put you in a cage and gave you food and water and kept you safe from all danger, would you be happy? The young Zathari thought about it. No, I would want to leave the cage. Why? Because I would want to see things, do things, make my own choices. Exactly, Jake said. That is what the war was about. Not about being safe. About being free to make our own choices, even if those choices might lead to danger. An older human teacher who was observing the class raised her hand. Admiral Morrison, do you think the galaxy is better now than it was under hegemony rule? Jake considered the question carefully. Better? I do not know. Different, certainly. More chaotic, definitely. But also more alive. Under the hegemony, everything was ordered and controlled. Now, species are making their own mistakes and learning from them. Some worlds are doing well. Others are struggling. But they are all choosing their own paths. And the conflicts, the teacher pressed, the wars that have broken out? Those are tragic, Jake admitted. And I wish I could say they would not happen. But free people sometimes fight. The key is teaching them to resolve conflicts without destroying each other. That is the next challenge. After the class, Jake walked through the colony's streets with the human teacher, whose name was Linda Gray. Do you ever regret it? Linda asked. Starting the war, I mean. I did not start the war, Jake corrected gently. The hegemony started it by demanding we surrender. I just refused. But millions died. Yes, Jake said quietly. And I think about them every day, every single one. But I also think about the billions who are living free because of what happened. Children growing up knowing they can choose their own futures. Species exploring their own paths. Is that worth the price we paid? I believe it is, but I understand if others disagree. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Linda said, My daughter studies you in history class. They call you the father of the free galaxy. Jake winced. I hate that title. I am just a man who said no at the right time. Or the wrong time, depending on who you ask. True, Jake agreed. History is complicated. There are no perfect heroes or absolute villains. Just people making hard choices and living with the consequences. Across the galaxy, the Morrison effect continued to ripple outward. New governments formed. Old alliances shifted. Species that had never spoken before started trading and cooperating. On Earth, now fully rebuilt from the war damage, a new generation was growing up. Children who had never known hegemony rule. They learned about the war in school, but to them, it was ancient history. Something their parents and grandparents had lived through. Captain Ryan Carter, now a commander in Earth's defense fleet, spoke to a group of young recruits. He was older now, with gray in his hair and scars from old battles. Some of you are too young to remember the war, he said. You have grown up free. You have never been told you must kneel to anyone. That freedom came at a price. Millions of people died to give you the right to stand tall. Never forget that. A young recruit raised her hand. Sir, do you think we will have to fight another war? Ryan considered the question. Maybe, probably. Freedom has to be defended. There will always be someone who thinks they should rule others. But the difference now is that the galaxy knows it has a choice. Before, people thought submission was inevitable. Now they know it is not. Because of Admiral Morrison? Because of everyone who refused to kneel, Ryan corrected. Morrison went first, yes. But millions followed. Every person who said no made a difference. In a quiet office on the Galactic Council station, Counselor Venn looked through reports from across the galaxy. He was older now, moving more slowly, but his mind was still sharp. His assistant, a young member of his species, brought him another stack of documents. More applications for council membership, Counselor. Three species that were part of the hegemony are requesting independent status. Ven smiled. Approve them. If they wish to govern themselves, that is their right. Some council members worry about stability. They say too much independence will lead to chaos. It will, Ven agreed. But chaos is the price of freedom. Order is easy. Freedom is hard. But it is worth it. The assistant hesitated. Counselor, may I ask a personal question? Of course. You were the first to support Admiral Morrison. Why? Ven was quiet for a moment, remembering that day in the tribunal so many years ago. Because when I looked at him, I saw something I had not seen in myself for 400 years. The courage to say no. The willingness to stand alone. And I realized that if one human could do it, maybe an old alien could find that courage too. Far from the centers of power, on the edge of explored space, Jake Morrison's ship approached an uncharted system. He was part of an exploration mission now, mapping new worlds and making first contact with species that had never encountered spacefaring civilizations. It was fitting work for someone who had spent his life pushing boundaries. Admiral, we are detecting signals from the third planet, his science officer reported. It looks like an industrial civilization. Pre-space flight, but advanced. Jake looked at the planet on his view screen. Another species taking their first steps toward the stars. Another people who would soon have to make choices about their future. Open a channel, Jake ordered. Let us introduce ourselves, but make sure they understand something very important. What is that, sir? That they have a choice about everything. We are here to offer friendship and knowledge, not to rule them. If they want to join the galactic community, wonderful. If they want to stay isolated, that is fine too. The choice is theirs. The science officer smiled. I will make sure they understand, sir. As the ship moved into orbit around the new world, Jake thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a captain facing impossible choices to an admiral teaching the galaxy about freedom. It had been a long road, filled with pain and loss, but also with triumph and hope. He thought about all the people who had fought and died in the war, all the species who had found their courage, all the changes that one simple refusal had set in motion. Sometimes, late at night, he still wondered if he had made the right choice, if all those deaths had been worth it. If freedom really was more important than safety. But then he would look out at the stars and see ships from 100 species flying under their own flags. He would read reports of worlds governing themselves. He would hear about young people planning their own futures. And he would know. Yes, it had been worth it. Because in the end, the right to choose your own path, to stand on your own feet, to live free, that right was worth any price. The galaxy had learned what defiance meant. Not just rebellion or chaos, but the simple, powerful act of refusing to be controlled. Of insisting on your right to be free. One human had refused to kneel. And in that refusal, he had given the galaxy the greatest gift possible. The knowledge that they did not have to kneel either. That they never had to kneel. That they could stand tall and choose their own destiny. And that was worth everything. And then he would look out his window at the free galaxy beyond. At the ships flying under their own flags. At the species making their own choices. At the chaos and beauty of freedom. And he would know that he had made the right choice. Because some things really are worth dying for. And one of those things is the right to stand on your own feet, make your own decisions, and live free. The galaxy had learned what defiance meant, and it would never kneel again. Amy could not believe it. Peace negotiations? They are not demanding our surrender? No, Paul said. They are asking to negotiate. It seems that between our resistance and the spreading rebellions, they have decided that crushing us is too expensive. Amy looked around her bridge. Her crew was battered, exhausted, and many positions were empty where people had died. But they were still there, still fighting, still free. What happens now? She asked. Now, Paul said, we see if we can turn survival into victory. Kael'thas was silent for a long time. Then he said, bring me Jake Morrison. I want to speak with him. In his cell, Jake heard the guards coming. He stood up slowly. His body was weak from months of imprisonment, but his spirit was unbroken. "The Arbiter wants to see you," a guard said. Jake smiled. "Then let us not keep it waiting." As they led him through the corridors, Jake thought about his crew, his people, and all the aliens who were now fighting for their freedom. He had refused to kneel at his trial. He had expected to die for that choice. Instead, he had started a revolution. The galaxy was waking up from a long sleep, and Jake Morrison, one human who refused to kneel, had been the alarm clock. On his view screen. Such a small world. Such weak defenses. But the humans kept fighting. They kept finding new ways to hurt his fleet. They refused to give up. For the first time, Thexcor wondered if he could actually win this war. Destroying the humans was possible. But at what cost? How many ships would he lose? How many soldiers? And what if other species saw what the humans were doing? What if they got ideas? The thought scared him more than he wanted to admit. In his cell, Jake Morrison sat in darkness. He had no windows, no way to know what was happening outside. But somehow he knew. He knew his people were fighting. He knew they were not surrendering. He smiled in the darkness. The hegemony had thought one human refusing to kneel was the problem. They were about to learn that one human was just the beginning. Ven was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that shocked everyone in the hall. "Perhaps we all have a choice. Perhaps we have always had one." The Arbiter's energy field flickered with anger. "Take the human away. This tribunal is over." As the guards grabbed Jake's arms, he looked back at Ven and smiled. The small alien nodded slowly. Something had changed in that hall. Something small but important. For the first time in thousands of years, someone had been reminded that submission was a choice, not a law of nature. Jake Morrison had refused to kneel. And in doing so, he had planted a seed of doubt in a galaxy that had forgotten how to question.